And so, welcome to Good Morning Cannabis. I have my friend here, Matt Cox. He also goes by Matthew Cox, but the people who like him call him Matt Cox. And he's with this amazing company called Dutchie. I've never seen this man without a smile. So we got to find out more where he works because we all want to kind of work for his company or at least support it somehow. But before we start, Matt, my first question to you, tell me the craziest thing that ever happened to you.
I love that question. First and foremost, thanks for having me on. This is really fun. I'm excited to see what ground we cover here. So the craziest thing that's ever happened to me, the first thing that popped into my head was actually the first thing that ever happened to me. When I was born about a month premature, and I was all tied up in an incubator I was in the hospital for a couple of months. And I think about that often, that experience of how that's affected my personality, how I approach things today, just coming into one world, my mother's world, into this other world, and it being so jarring and interesting, and the process of healing that I went through. So I would imagine that has to be the craziest thing that I've ever endured. Of course, I don't have any recollection of it, but again, I oftentimes wonder, how did that impact who I am today, my overall character, and how I see things?
Well, you seem to survive it pretty well because you seem like a pretty upbeat, level-headed, holistic guy. So that's great. So let's kind of move to the next question, which is, give me a little bit more detail, rank, file, social security, don't have to give your social security number. Tell me a little bit more than just Matt Cox, a little bit about the company, and then we'll get into some more specific questions.
Yeah, a little bit about me first, and then the company.
Yeah, a little bit more about you, and then a tad about the company.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. So yeah, as far as I go, I'm a creative by nature. I studied art at the Savannah College of Art and Design. I love composition of any sorts when it comes to writing, painting, collage. That's a very important expression of mine. Always love body movements. Having an active body and lifestyle, it has a really important impact on just my overall happiness. And so I love being in nature, trail running, paddle boarding, experiencing new places. I love petroglyphs and pictographs and historic sites and Native American history and places of pilgrimage and sacred places. Those things light me up. Absolutely love my family, really supportive family. I have a daughter who's 9 years old. Her name's Marla.
Awesome.
Super whimsical kid. She inspires me every day. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. I'm a pretty competitive person, so I love competing, whether that's on the field at work, or it's a game of ping pong, or ultimate frisbee. I really love competing and I love winning, which brings me into the Dutchie side of things as well. As you mentioned, I was an earlier employee of Dutchie. I was the 8th employee. I started about 3.5 years ago, and when I started, I think we had maybe 100 stores on the platform, just focused on e-commerce. And today we have just about 650 employees, and we're covering just about the whole vertical when it comes to software. So we merged with Greenbits and LeafLogix about a year ago when we raised our Series C round of funding. So now Dutchie covers point of sale, e-commerce, integrated payment processing. And for those vertical operators out there as well, we've got solutions for cultivation, for manufacturing, processing, and distribution. So we're really approaching that sort of dispensary in a box sort of solution, and defragmenting technology in the space and making it a lot more frictionless. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. At this juncture, we're processing just about $14 billion in sales annually through our point of sale and e-commerce platform. So I've seen a lot of change since I started as the 8th employee, when we were pretty scrappy at the time, to now we're this large behemoth in the space. And the really, really cool thing about my experience at Dutchie is that I came over to the company for a bunch of reasons, but the number one reason, it truly was it was culture. And I've really wanted to be somewhere where I felt seen and I felt like I could be unapologetically myself. and then I could have a really massive impact and to really be able to explore every nook and cranny of my potential. And that's exactly what I've been able to do since day one at Dutchie. And as we've grown, the nature of that desire has only grown. We've become more process oriented and dialed in and streamlined. But the cool thing is that our culture hasn't suffered one bit. We have a very emotionally intelligent and people first mentality. And that, again, that's why I came over. That's the biggest reason I came over in the first place. And we've doubled down on that philosophy. And it's really been beautiful to see. Managing that type of culture with 650 folks isn't always easy. And I think our leadership team has done an outstanding job. And yeah, we have a lot of fun doing it.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about, because you've been in the space for a while, what do you see happening on the East Coast based upon the experiences that you've had on the West Coast and some other states, especially in the POS systems and the way that people are going to market?
Yeah. Sorry about my Slack going off here.
No worries. This is all casual, so you can see I'm not dressed in my three-piece suit or my top hat today.
Yeah. So where I see things going, especially in the East Coast, and what I've been really enjoying seeing people lean into, one is social equity. Social equity has been such a massive focal point in the East Coast as of late. And folks are really putting money where their mouth is. And I think that's absolutely paramount to the future of cannabis. So seeing New York do an incredible job at that. New Jersey's new rec license is coming out, focusing on social equity. Connecticut as well. Like all of these East Coast markets are really focusing on that piece and making sure that folks really have a fair shot. And that we are really bolstering the social equity community. So I think that's been really powerful. I love seeing that. And I think that focal point is going to continue to grow. Some other pieces that I'm seeing out there, New York's an example. Being able to support the smaller operators by limiting the amount of licenses one can have. I think right. MSOs out there are super important, and there's a lot of respectful organizations. No shade at MSOs whatsoever, but it's also really cool to see the small and medium-sized businesses have a pathway for success. So really, when we see the rules and regulations and how a state like New York, how they carved out their license types and limited the number of licenses one can have, I think that's really, really smart and builds a really dynamic cannabis economy. So I see that trend continuing as well, and I've been really stoked to see that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So question for you, this is going back on the personal side. What got you into cannabis? What led you there, your journey there? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I was working in the corporate world for quite some time. And, as you recall, like the nature of a lot of my professional experience prior to the corporate world was on the creative side, right. Studied art and illustration. So getting to the corporate world was an effort I needed to make more money. Wasn't making a lot of money freelancing and working at this apartment building. And so when I found out that I was going to be a dad, I was like, oh man, like I got to make some money. I got to support my kiddo. Let's rock and roll. So that got me to the corporate world. And, I definitely worked through a lot of the things that were unnatural to me, which sales was very unnatural to me. Being a cold calling people and having a bunch of conversations with strangers was one of my worst nightmares. And so I was able to work through a lot of those aspects of me that weren't developed yet in the corporate world. But then at a certain point, there was an expiration date. I felt like a fish out of water. And I took a pause one day. I'd quit my corporate job without having another role. And I'd asked myself, like, what is it that I really want to do? And the two sectors that were fascinating to me, one was cannabis, and the other one was like the startup technology world. And I actually was viewing those two things as being two very separate things. Right. And I wanted to get into an industry that I could feel like I could be unapologetically myself. I could be really creative and utilize some of the eccentric sides of me, and it be a benefit to the business. And I was blessed enough to find an opportunity with Greenbit's point of sale. I think I was the 8th employee of Greenbit's too, coincidentally. Wow. I was just looking on some job boards, and when I saw that job pop up, it gives me goosebumps right now. I knew it. I locked onto that. I was like, I'm going to get this job. Like if there was, I just could not take my eye off of that prize. I knew it was going to happen. There was this strange manifestation process that seeded in that moment. And I didn't have any ins there. I was a resume and a stack of, I think, 600 or so.
Wow.
And every step of the process, I had a little like mock, like cold call voicemail I had to leave, and a writing exercise, and all these, there's tons of steps in the interview. I focused so much, and it was just like getting that game face on between, like before a big playoff game kind of feeling. And long story short, I ended up getting that role, and it was an incredible opportunity because, I was the first business development rep on the Green Bits team, and really helped to build that sales team and to secure some of, that foundational business that we did. So that was just an incredible experience, and it did indeed give me the opportunity to be me. And I had great mentors on the Green Bits team, like Ben, the former CEO, and Matt Beckley, who I reported to when I first started. And he was such a great mentor and helped me grow, and helped me find my footing as a salesperson in the cannabis technology industry. I got 2.5 years or so under my belt at Green Bits. And that's when I discovered some opportunities at Dutchie, and met Ross, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen your demos, and we have clients that are using your product. I guess my question would be, if someone was interested in more information on Dutchie, I mean, obviously they can link to you, but how do they get in touch with you, Matt?
Sure.
You have a smoke signals somewhere that we can send up, or?
Yeah, smoke signal is a good backup. But I'd say the most expedited way to reach me is just shoot me a note. I'm super responsible on email. And if I'm not the fellow that can take care of you, I'll make sure you get in the right hands. And my email is matt@dutchie.com. That's the benefit of being the 8th employee. I don't have to have the dot last name.
There you go. I love it.
Matt at Dutchie, give me a shout. Happy to help whoever out and to make sure that they get pointed in the right direction.
That's great. Well, thank you, Matt. And I'm going to say goodbye. But so this is the point where I try to figure out how to shut it off, but it's all good. But thanks a lot for the time. And we will definitely, yep, there we go.